So I want to keep it.
Keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
Absolutely. Hey, we'll get your calls.
Okay.
Good deal.
We're good to go.
Ready?
Yes.
You're recording.
Ready?
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. It is a meeting of the Finance Committee for the New Haven Board of Alders. We'll begin by reading the published notice. Aldermanic Notice, New Haven. The Finance Committee will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, April 9, 2025 at 6:00 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chambers, 165 Church Street, New Haven, to hear the following. 1, to hear public testimony concerning the mayor's annual budget for the fiscal year 2025-26. 2, OR 2025-0012, ordinance amendment to appropriating ordinance number 1, authorizing budget transfer number 201-25-1, transferring funds from the police services salary accounts to overtime in the amount of $1,300,000.00. 3, a workshop to review portions of the annual city budgets proposed for the fiscal year commencing on July 1st, 2025. The following city departments will be heard: Public Safety Communications, Engineering Department, Chief Administrative Officer, Enterprise Funds, Alling Memorial Golf Course, Ralph Walker Skating Rink, East Rock Park Communications Tower, and Lighthouse Carousel. These items may be inspected at the Office of Legislative Services, 165 Church Street, 2nd floor, New Haven. Per order, the Honorable Adam Marchand, Chair, attest Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need a disability-related accommodation, please call 3 business days in advance at 946-7651-VOICE or 946-8582-TTY. Public comment/testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. The meeting may be viewed on the Board of Alders YouTube page. Next, we'll have our committee members introduce themselves, starting to my right.
Good evening, all. Yvette Hamilton, Ward 24.
Adam Marchand, Ward 25 Chair.
Sal Punzo, Ward 17.
Honda Smith, Ward 30.
Thank you, colleagues, for being here. I also like to know for the record that our colleague Caroline Smith, Alder of the 9th Ward, is here with us. Glad to see members of our city staff and members of the public here. So you heard me read that very, exciting public notice that we basically have 3 items of business tonight. The first is the public hearing on the budget. So if you're here to testify or to support others giving testimony, that's the beginning of the meeting, and we'll start off shortly with that. After that, there's a regular business item. This is, after all, our monthly meeting for the month of April, and there's a transfer requested to pay for some overtime that went over budget. And then the third item is actually a group of items. Those are departmental presentations, budgetary presentations from Public Safety, Communications, Engineering, Chief Administrative Officer, and the Enterprise Funds. All 3 items are things people can stay and listen to. You're welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but perhaps you want to leave at some point. So when you want to leave, please do so quietly. And if you want to chit and chat with your friends, do it out in the hallway, please. Because when people start talking before they leave that door, it kind of interrupts our ability to keep going. And we have a long meeting and we're going to need to keep going. Let me also say that if you have a cell phone or a pager or some other device that can make noise, turn it off or put it on mute. You may have the most interesting ringtone ever invented. We do not want to hear it. We've got a lot of work to do this evening, and we intend to stick to our business. We thank you for your cooperation. When you come forward to give testimony, or if you're a department head and you're coming forward to lead a workshop, we will ask you to come forward, give your name and address for the record. A business record will suffice, but we need your name and address for the record, because all these comments are going on the public record. I also asked people to be restrained in their expressions of support for others' testimony. That just makes the meeting longer, and it makes us on the committee crankier, which nobody wants. So, silently snap to yourself, that's fine, but we don't want people giving big ovations between testimonies, because then the meeting will go on forever, and we don't want that. We also will stick to our traditional time limits for public testimony, which is 3 minutes. We will give you a notice, a warning when you have a minute left. If you have a lot of comments you wish to offer, you can give 3 minutes worth now, you can give 3 minutes worth at our next meeting, or you can email your public testimony. If you have a document that you've created, give us 3 minutes of highlights tonight and then email us the document, and we can enter all of those comments into the public record. So we definitely want to accept as much comments as we can, but we are going to stick to 3 minutes per person so that we can conduct our business that we have this evening. Okay, I think that's all the announcements I have for now. We will begin, as I said, with the public hearing on the mayor's proposed budget. And I have a list of people who have signed up. The first person on the list is Tani Cookson Muhammad. After Ms. Muhammad will be Alicia Santilli. Good evening.
Good evening.
Name and address for the record, please.
Tani Cookson Mohammed. Address is 493 Fitch Street. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a project coordinator at CARE and a member of CPAN. I run the Healthy Food Procurement Working Group, one of CPAN's committees. I'm here tonight to request the allocation of $993,000 to existing food assistance programs in New Haven that are not currently reflected in the city's proposed budget. Within the last few years, CARE has trained 10 New Haven pantries to implement SWAP, which is supporting wellness at pantries. It's a program that teaches pantry staff to read nutrition labels, to know what types of foods are coming into their pantries, and encourage them to stock healthier options. There's also an education component to teach and encourage pantry guests to choose more nutritious foods for their families. Over the years, the pantries have been very excited and enthusiastic about implementing the SWAP program and are trying their very best. Continuing to follow up and support the 10 SWAP pantries we trained at CARE, we learned that while they really like the program, being able to get healthy foods has proven to be a challenge, and the pantries struggle to stock enough nutritious options to meet the needs and volume of their guests. Because most of the pantries are small and have limited resources, they do not have the funds or resources to buy healthy foods for their pantries. They rely on food donations, which are most often shelf-stable foods that are mostly unhealthy. We also know from speaking not only with the pantries, but also with people with lived experience in food insecurity, that they want healthier food for themselves and for their children. According to Data Haven's Community Wellbeing Index 2023, 34% of New Haven adults are obese, which is a leading risk factor for chronic diseases like diabetes, which affects 8% of New Haven adults. We need funding for food here in New Haven. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the list is Alicia Santilli, followed by Steve Werlin. And while Ms. Santilli is coming forward, let me just note that we put a fresh sign-up sheet at the table to our right. So if you wish to testify and you haven't had a chance to sign up yet, you may do so over there. And you have paper for us.
Thank you.
Just give me the whole staff.
Oh, thank you.
I'll get it passed out. Do you have more?
I have more, yes.
Because other colleagues will show up.
Great. Thank you.
So we won't start the clock yet. We always do the paperwork.
Yes. So we're not distracted by shuffling your paper. One more from that president.
Thank you.
See how we do this?
Okay, and then we'll give the rest to our staff. Okay,
Thank you.
So good evening, members of the Board of Alders. My name is Alicia Santilli. I live at 235 Woodward Avenue in Ward 18. I've lived in New Haven for more than 20 years. I serve as one of the co-chairs of the New Haven Coordinated Assistance Network, or CFAN. On behalf of CFAN, I'm here to request allocation of $993,000 to existing food assistance programs in New Haven, which is not currently reflected in the city's proposed budget. CFAN convened in 2019 as a coalition focused on hunger relief in New Haven. Our aim is to work together collectively to improve the food assistance system, say that 10 times, such as food pantries and soup kitchens across New Haven, so that people who experience hunger face less barriers when accessing food. Our coalition collaborates to determine what barriers and challenges exist and determine how we can solve those problems together. We have no paid staff, though a few organizations provide backbone support to help coordinate some of our work. It's truly a community effort. Nearly 6 years later, we represent more than 40 food assistance programs, consumer advocacy groups, and partnering organizations, and we support 5 very active working groups. Our food assistance system in New Haven is made up of more than 50 food pantries and soup kitchens. That sounds like a lot, right? 50? But if you dig deeper to understand how this system functions, you'll realize it's not quite enough. First, we need to understand that our city has experienced an unprecedented increase in hunger in the last 3 years. Food insecurity rose from 15% in 2021 to 27% in 2024. This is compared to 18% across the state. Importantly, 37% of New Haven residents rely on soup kitchens and food pantries to provide food for themselves and their families.
We have about a minute left.
So 37% of New Haven residents is nearly 50,000 people accessing food at 50 pantries and soup kitchens. Except for a few large food programs, most of these pantries and soup kitchens are very small. They're run by volunteers out of church basements on bi-weekly or monthly basis. They have very limited funds, if any, to get food. They get donated food from retailers and other sources and free food from the Connecticut Food Bank, which has recently suffered enormous cuts by the federal government in recent weeks. Our food programs are continuously performing miracles to get food to hungry families, but they do not have enough food to give out. In recent history, the city of New Haven has never invested in our food assistance system in New Haven, except for some support provided to a few programs through the Community Development Block Grant Program. We've never been included in the city budget. With the federal funding crisis just starting to impact our food system and the economy about to crash, hunger will continue to worsen. CFAN and our network of heroic food assistance programs are doing their part. We're asking the city of New Haven to step up and do your part as well. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public testimony.
Thank you. Questions from colleagues? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next on the list is Steve Werland, followed by Susan Harris. And let me just recognize our colleague Alder Festa, who has joined us. Okay, let's take a moment.
It looks similar, but it's different.
Similar but different. Okay.
Good evening, my name is
Well,
Steve.
before you start, let me get the paper
Oh,
handed
sure.
out. Otherwise, we won't. I'm old and I can't. We'll give you the rest of it.
We can just read it.
And then before you begin, Mr. Worland, let me just also remind members here that if you came late and you didn't have a chance to sign up to testify, there is a sign-up sheet on the table over there at the far wall. And so if you wish to testify but have not had an opportunity to sign up, please sign up. And now, Mr. Worland, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Alderman Rashad, distinguished members of the Finance Committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Steve Werland. I'm the Executive Director of Downtown Evening Soup Kitchen, or DESK, operating at 266 State Street. I also serve as the co-chair of the Coordinated Food Assistance Network, or CFAN, that Alicia referred to, and I'm a resident at 24 Alden Ave in Ward 25. Over the years, the city, as Alicia noted, has invested very little in food assistance. In 2020, the city allocated about $49,000 in CDBG funding to food assistance, and that was the peak. As far as I can tell, no general funds have been allocated to food assistance programming in at least the last decade. Nevertheless, more than a third of New Haven residents are utilizing food pantries and soup kitchens. So, how do we do it? How are the 50 or so food assistance programs in New Haven operating? Where's the money coming from to get all that food? You're probably thinking, well, you do food drives, you do fundraising, maybe you've got some partnerships with restaurants and supermarkets, and you're correct, you're not wrong, we do all of that. But that's not actually where most of the food is coming from. Across our system, more than 2/3 of the food is coming from Connecticut Food Share. Food Share serves as the state's largest distributor of food to those organizations serving in our neighborhoods here in New Haven. So if a New Haven family is eating food that they got at a food pantry in New Haven, it probably passed through Connecticut Food Share at one point. The largest single source of funding for food at Connecticut Food Share is a USDA program called TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. Last month, the Trump administration announced that it would be cutting $500 million, that's $1 billion with a B, to this program. Now, I'm explaining all of this to you because I think it's important that you know where the food at food pantries that's feeding 50,000 New Haven residents is coming from, and why it is that we won't have this food available to count on in the coming year. This is a massive funding gap, and it will require more than ever an all-hands-on-deck approach to address. In addition to all of those food drives and donations, the state is going to have to step up. That's why CFAN members have been joining with providers across the state to advocate to the General Assembly for $10 million in food assistance this session.
You have about a minute left.
Tonight, I'm asking the city of New Haven to do its part as well, and for the Board of Alders to consider adding to the budget funding for food assistance. Last fall, before all these haphazard cuts at the federal level, CFAN put together a legislative ask, which you have before you. If this is too ambitious of an ask, let's chip away at it over the next several years. And let's start now. Let's focus on two pieces that will help address the current budget crisis created by the federal government. First, healthy food procurement. Let's get cash directly into food assistance providers so that they can, through cooperative buyers club, purchase wholesale foods to distribute at food pantries. And second, let's fund the school break distribution program. There are 14,000 New Haven public school students in our city that get free meals at school every day. Help us extend that essential support so that kids don't go hungry during the winter and spring breaks. Can I wrap up with one quote?
Wrap up, please.
In an article that was published just last week about federal cuts in food assistance, the mayor said, "We're going to do our best to adapt to the cuts that will come. There's a lot of uncertainty, but we're focused on having a status quo budget to continue to fund the services that are important to our residents. If federal funding falls through, Mayor Elker pledged to respond and continue to work with nonprofit organizations to support the New Haven community. Please make no mistake, the funding has fallen through. The mayor's presented a status quo budget in a year that is anything but status quo. We call on you now to actually fund those services that, as he says, quote, are important to our residents by funding $500,000 in food assistance, which I assure you is important to the 50,000 people in New Haven who are relying on this food."
Thank you. Questions from colleagues?
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Susan Harris is next on the list, followed by David Paul Firestone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Name and address for the record.
Susan Harris, 10 Springside Avenue, Apartment 1. Good evening, honorable members of the Board of Alders. I am here to support and request the allocation of nearly $1 million to the existing food assistance programs here in New Haven. I am a member of Witnesses to Hunger, a grassroots organization of people with lived experience of hunger and poverty, fighting food insecurity through advocacy in New Haven, and I have lived in New Haven for the past 30 years. I am also a member of CFAN and have been a part of this life-saving work and know how its current funds are insufficient to meet the rise of hunger. As Alicia said, soaring from 15% in 2021 to 27% in 2024. Another sobering statistic is that 76% of students in the New Haven public schools are eligible for free or reduced meals. For some children, the only meals they receive is during school. Unfortunately, food insecurity does not stop when there is no school. So, who feeds the children in need when school is on break? The answer is the School Break Groceries Program. Established by CFAN and supported by several of our member food pantries with limited funding from United Way, while we receive no funding from New Haven Public Schools or the City of New Haven. Food is purchased from Connecticut Food Share and other food suppliers, and volunteers assemble and distribute about 1,200 bags of groceries at 4 school sites across New Haven during the 3 school vacations, including the August gap, the week to 10 days after summer meals ends and school begins. Therefore, we ask the city to support school break groceries with an allocation of $285,000 per year to provide up to 14,000 students with healthy, nutritious food during each of the 3 school vacations.
You have 1 minute.
To reduce the burdens from families' budgets to feed their children, usually at the end of the month when money is short and SNAP benefits, if any, are depleted. We would love to distribute many more bags of groceries than the 1,200 we are now doing, considering there are over 19,000 school children in New Haven Public Schools. What is the Board of Alders prepared to do to help us keep New Haven Public School children fed during school breaks? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions from colleagues? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
So David Paul Firestone is next, followed by Alaya Aquina.
Who's going to signal when my time is up?
We'll let you know.
Okay.
We'll give you a heads up when you've got a minute left, okay?
Okay.
And we won't start the clock until you have told us your name.
Oh.
And whatever address you wish to give.
David Paul Firestone, 52 House Street, Apartment 340, New Haven, Connecticut, 06511.
And I think the mic is working really great, so maybe move back just a little bit. Thank you.
Okay.
You may begin, sir.
I will do the best I can, being unprepared. I represent Fellowship Place, which is, Fellowship. It's a place, community center for people with mental health diagnoses and dual diagnoses of mental health issues and substance abuse issues. Fellowship Place has a shoestring food budget. It's about $50,000 a year. And I've thought about this quite a bit. It cannot afford to give us the nutrition we need on just $50,000 a year. The food is free, but nobody wants to have to pay for meals except maybe myself. And I think, don't have my facts straight, but I think Fellowship Place gets its food from the New Haven Food Bank. Is there such a place?
It's fine.
All right.
Something similarly named.
Or something, we named it. We might just have a sandwich and chips for a meal, or sometimes the food, they have a good quality entree, but there's nothing to go with it. It would be nice to have a little bit of extra money from someplace to finance Fellowship Place feeding us 3 meals every weekday. And, okay, that's that. I'm going to jump to this is a different topic. I'll just speak for a minute. I think it's been proven that when people like me have a crisis and all of a sudden the thought is, oh, I got to go to the emergency room. And instead of that, a lot of times people like me could go to places like a respite house. So till the crisis passes, and that would save everyone.
1 minute.
Okay, that would save everyone a lot of money, I think. So I don't have figures to what number of dollars go to crisis respite places, but they do need money from somewhere. I don't know if the city has it in its budget to help out with this situation or not. But that's my second plug. And the third plug, there's a skating rink or something on Edgewood Park.
Yes.
And it's deserted, isn't it, most of the time?
It's being expanded, so I think during renovation, perhaps it wasn't used as much as normal. But normally, there's a lot of people use it.
I don't think minors should be allowed to use the roller skate unless they're supervised in a roller skating rink by a parent or someone. I thought about that a lot too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions from colleagues?
No, no question. Thank you, sir.
Saying none, thank you for your testimony, sir. Alaya Aquino, followed by Ethan Reynaldo. Good evening.
Good evening.
Name and address for the record, please.
Alaya Kino, 74 Emmett Avenue, Derby, Connecticut. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. I am currently a senior at Cooperative Arts and Humanities High School, and I'm also a member of New Haven Climate Movement since October 2023. I just want to give a testimony about our current mission statement. So there's a lot going on in New Haven with lots of new building construction and installation of new transportation infrastructure. Both changes present opportunities to shift the direction of New Haven with little regard to the creation of air and climate pollution. The New Haven Climate Movement would like the 2025 to 2026 budget and the 2-year capital budget to include staff and capital funds to support making these ongoing changes produce significant cuts in greenhouse gas pollution by 2030. Building energy and transportation systems each create about 40% of New Haven carbon emissions. For transportation, we think improving the city infrastructure that's part of the bus system is key. With bus rapid transit coming in 2028, we need to build on this investment and make investments on now to increase ridership through the region. These should include more bus shelters with seating, signage, and possibly with art to make them more attractive for bus goers. Communication strategies to get people to try out buses and trains, understand where they go, how to use the transit app, and about the financial and health benefits of public transit. Free fares for high school age youth to encourage use of CT transit at an early age. And increasing numbers of riders will support increasing the number of buses running and the frequency of the buses, which will further improve the attractiveness of the system. Bikes and scooters can also play an important role in climate pollution reduction. And New Haven needs a clear plan and needed investments to get more people onto these inexpensive, healthy options. Given that there are some new isolated segments of bike infrastructure being built, the city should develop a plan to connect these segments into a full network of separated cycle tracks that can be constructed over time. In the next couple years, we need more signage to slow down cars and educate users about sharing the road. More speed limit signs, better speed enforcement, and more safety infrastructures like dividers and planters. Overall, New Haven now has electric and regular bike share through Ride New Haven, a regional bus system with bus rapid transit coming, new on-demand transportation system with VIA, and possibly a new electric scooter share, and 4 train lines. All these new opportunities need planning, communication strategies, and coordination staff to make sure they work well and work well together. Just to say, in New Haven Climate Movement's 2021 Bike Vision Report, it was estimated that just 6% of city street space is needed to create a citywide network of protected bike lanes. With respect to building energy, there's a huge amount of work to do on getting our homes, schools, offices, and businesses off of fossil fuels. Given the potential savings,
You just wrap it up.
in conclusion, we just want to say that we have been addicted to fossil fuels for 100 years, so it will take serious work and investment to move away from the status quo and create a healthier, safer future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from colleagues?
No question.
Seeing none, thank you so much
Thank you.
for your testimony. Next on the list is Ethan Reynaldo. I just want to comment that we're always glad to hear from every segment of our population, including our youth. We're glad to have the public engaged. Good evening.
Are you glad I'm here?
We're also very honored to have the presence of our colleague from Ward 27, Alder Richard Furr.
Wait, to start,
Oh, and
the New Haven Climate Movement.
I neglected also to recognize our president, Alder Walker Myers, who has joined us.
Thank you so much.
Would you give me the gold badge?
You can pass them down.
Yeah, and if you'll just wait one moment. Not enough for everybody, so we'll just spread it out. Okay. Now you can give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Ethan Reynolds, and I currently live up 90 BoA Drive, Durham. And yeah, I'm here to, good evening, I'm here to testify in support of climate funding, greenhouse gas reduction, infrastructure improvements on behalf of New Haven Climate Movement. First, I would like to say I completely in support of the increased food budget. Like, I know, like, I volunteer with the soup kitchen, like, I know they're getting hard hit by all this federal stuff, and we really need to step up. But anyway, I know we're well aware of the emerging climate threats in the future, now in the future, as well as the systemic changes that challenges and inequities that need to be dealt with. I guess the two main points I'd like to reiterate is that the city should be investing in climate solutions to support the health of the community now and in the future, and have a clear plan to cut greenhouse gases, given responsibility to citizens and the world. Even if it seems like a losing battle, a careful balance of investments in the future with improvements to current infrastructure improves lives of people now and then. Like improving public transit services increases like mobility, economic mobility, and sets the groundwork for decreasing transportation emissions with like education efforts and improvements of quality, affordable housing and people-centered infrastructure to improving an economic vitality, also reducing car dependence, investing in safer non-car centered streets and pedestrian infrastructure, reducing like fatalities, controlling car traffic and reducing air pollution. Also to go on the point of New Haven climate debt, in the past 20 years, estimated that $40 billion of climate debt. And what that really means, it's not an actual bill, but really just a measure of the cumulative harm of emissions produced in New Haven.
1 minute.
Thank you. So while it would be obviously unreasonable to ask the city to like write a check to pay for that, that's not what climate debt is really asking for. It's really like when you're producing pollution, it's the responsibility to like target the systems and entities that are producing this pollution. And yeah, so while the climate crisis is a huge issue with no easy fix, it's important to start investing now to really like start building those cumulative benefits. And even if some impacts might not seem significant, these like making the changes, getting this like investments in infrastructure now is really important to the future, our like future generations, our children, and also like having better infrastructure now. So yeah, to conclude, like with increasingly severe climate impacts coming, like failing to take bold action is really setting up for a bigger mess. So well, there are many priorities we definitely want to keep in mind, developing and supporting frameworks of goals and accountability, and a long-term climate plan. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from colleagues? Seeing none, have a good evening. And if you want to give those comments to our staff, we'd be grateful. So that is the final name on our sign-up sheet for testimony. Is there anyone else here, a member of the public, who wishes to testify on the mayor's proposed budget for next fiscal year? Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on the mayor's proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26? And for a third time, is there anyone here who wishes to testify on the mayor's proposed budget for next fiscal year? Seeing none, we're going to move to our next item. And before we proceed with the next item, let me just announce that the third and final public hearing on the mayor's proposed budget will be on the 30th of April. That will be the next and final opportunity for members of the public to come before this committee and testify on this topic. And we thank everybody who came to give their input on this topic. The next item on our agenda is a request for a transfer to cover overtime costs in police services. So I imagine we'll have some city staff come forward and give us a presentation on this. Good evening. When you're all settled, please give us your names and addresses for the record.
Justin McCarthy, 569 Orange Street, New Haven.
Shannon McHugh, 295 Oregon Road, Library.
Rebecca Bombero, 122 West Rock Avenue, New Haven.
Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So we are coming to discuss the police transfer. It's an overtime transfer, and what we would like to do is we projected out overtime for the rest of the year, and our estimates show that we believe that the overtime will exceed the budget by about $1.3 million. It is an estimate, but that is our projection at this point in time, and therefore we are recommending transferring the funds from the salary line, which has significant vacancies. The chief's here. The chief might have more detail. I was just giving an overview of what we're proposing. Yes.
While you're at it, just give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, Monique Vectano, Assistant Chief, 1 Union Avenue.
Thank you for being here. Please continue.
So we propose that we move some of the salary savings into the overtime budget line items in order to cover the projected overtime overage. We also, we've projected it out. We projected out the salaries, and the retro payment was paid out of the salary budget line. However, there's a $1.7 million labor reserve, which at the year-end transfer, we will transfer over if need be to cover any overages in the salary line, given the fact that that whole half of the retro payment was paid on March 7th. So it's showing a $4 million payment, actually $4.7 million payment. But some of that will come from the labor reserve. But today we are only asking to take what we believe will be the salary savings and transferring it over to the overtime budget lines.
Thank you for that. Before I ask either of you to chime in, I think one obvious question that colleagues might have would be what portion of this overage is due to the pay rate increases that resulted from the settled contract versus which ones are due towards more utilization of overtime than was anticipated. That seems like an obvious question that probably one or both of you will be able to address.
Well, I have numbers in front of me.
Well, if you can address it, that's fine too.
Yes. So for most of the year, we see that the overtime, if you were to average it out, it was about $300,000 per week, sometimes more, sometimes less. Since the contract was put into place, that has increased. And for the rest of the year, we are projecting out that overtime would be $311,000 roughly per week from now until the end of the year. So it has gone up about $11,000 roughly. I mean, it varies, but if you were to average it up.
Anything else you two would like to add?
So I'll jump in. One of the things that I'm working on with the chief's office at PD is we're doing, every couple of weeks, we're doing a meeting to review the overtime, go over any areas that we can modify the overtime and check out areas that we can reduce overtime. Obviously, this is very fluid. When we have incidents that require additional detectives to come in, for instance, there's not much we can do with that. When things like PAL camp are involved, there could be a driver there, right? There are so many variables with PD overtime. However, by managing it and monitoring it, we're able to find areas where we can reduce it to the best of our abilities. It's without saying to this group, because you're all very senior on this board, that police overtime is a variable that we are faced with constantly, and we're doing our best to manage.
Thank you. I see that our chief has arrived, sir. If you wouldn't mind giving your name and address for the record, please.
Sure.
We'll give you a moment to settle in.
Yeah, I apologize. I was at a ceremony for an officer that won an award about sexual violence victims who was important and raised here. Carl Jacobson, 15 West Dudley Road, New Haven, Connecticut.
Thank you very much. So we've had an explanation from our Director of Management and Budget. Oh, one more person to introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, everyone. Mike from the Captain with the New Haven Police Department, 1 Union Avenue.
I also want to recognize our colleague Alder Redente, who has joined us. So unless anyone has anything else to say, perhaps we'll just go right into questions and then anyone here can respond. So thank you for that information. The queue is open now for questions from colleagues on this request for a transfer. Request for a transfer for police services overtime.
I see you struggling with it, Alder Festa. Do you wish to ask a question?
Let me see if I can phrase it properly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It somewhat reiterates what you had already asked regarding what we had anticipated when the contract was finalized, that overtime would go up. We didn't have an idea of how much when I think we had you guys in front of us the last time, but it seems like now you have a pretty good idea of where we're heading with this. And it was mentioned that it was about it's going to be about $311K a week. Is that for the remainder of the fiscal year? And what impact will the new classes have on overtime moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's a rough estimate. I think
You're going to want to move that microphone a little bit back. Thank you.
I think you also have to look at what the numbers you get. I don't believe have the reimbursements taken out, which is a big difference. The weekly number given out of police overtime never includes the reimbursements, which in my opinion isn't fair because the reimbursements are 20, 30,000 sometimes. But anyways, that's a different story. I think that we're not going to have a huge impact on the hirings with the new hirings because it takes a year to get those officers where they're saving you money instead of costing you money, right? But I don't think it's years. I think it's within a 12 to 16 month period, we'll be able to get to a point where those extra beats and things that we're hiring for are covered by regular duty officers instead of overtime, right? But we're a unique city, right? We just had to hire tonight because we had a protested tweet. So we get called on to do a lot of things that aren't in the budget or in, we found out about that protested tweet yesterday, so how do I account for all these things that happen, right? But I'm trying to. We did an estimation of what the Palestinian protest would cost us, right? And then they didn't have as many. So that was a good thing. So we are trying, I think, if we didn't put some measures in place recently, the overtime would have been even more because of the increases due to the contract. But we took some of the beats that we had out there that I know the community likes and that are important to the community, and we pulled them back a little and we're more specific and more knowledgeable. Okay, where do we really need these beats? Because what's going on in the city? But you can't cover everything. We saw the horrible double homicide recently, but that wasn't something that came to us through a group beef or neighborhood beef. It's we'll be able to talk about that more. But the feeling of the people in the neighborhood afterwards needs to be tendered to. So we need to put a walking beat out there and let them feel that because it doesn't matter if violence is low, which it is, it's how the people in the city feel. So we made some serious cuts. They worked out, but the reflection was really only, it still went up, right? But I would say we're on track with our hiring process with another class going in, about 16 people in June. We have 15 people training, that we can get to the number we need to get to help reduce that number. I think, did I answer that?
Yeah. And more. You know, you mentioned 20 to 30K reimbursement. Is that yearly?
No, almost weekly. All right, I went a little high, Shannon, maybe 12 to 20.
No, and there's a difference, like we projected out with, so there's a projection's a projection. Like you can't, no one has a crystal ball. And so in our office, we do include some of the reimbursements. So our number is a little bit lower than the police number. We went with a higher number to be conservative. It's not a huge difference, but you know, like when we say we're projecting that out, it's based on averages, and it's really, you know, I wish I had a crystal ball, but so it is an estimate. I just want to point that out. And there are variances in the way we do it and the way the police do it. We kind of marry them. And I'm using a number we think is slightly on the conservative side, so we don't have to come back again and then we cover the budget.
And of course, we use everything possible. We use our federal partners to pay for some of our overtime. We use our state grants for different reasons to do our overtime. But like I said, things pop up out of nowhere, like a major protest at the airport, that if we don't have some kind of police presence there, that could be a problem. Do we go back to Tweed and try to get that reimbursed? Of course, but that's why Shannon doesn't always put it in there, because it's not 100% reimbursable. But I'll tell you, it's probably 90% with a lot of the things, you know. So, you know, so we try to do the best we can on that.
And the estimate we have on the reimbursement is about 2.7 million.
Okay, so 2.7 million for the year in reimbursements, and that goes to general fund, obviously, but you do consider that in the police budget?
Yes.
Do we consider that full amount in the police budget, or just?
We built it into the estimate when we came up with a $1.3 million dollar transfer, and that is built into that estimate.
Okay, thanks for that. Also, do you feel that Compass is helping at all with some of the overtime, with dealing with some of the cases?
Yeah, I would say that, like a scenario where an officer can clear or go to another call, Compass takes over. If they have to take that person to a facility, or even if they go to the hospital, we're not tying up an officer at the hospital with that person. Compass is sitting there. So I think there's definitely, you know, an assistance to Compass, with Compass, for our overtime.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Punzo.
Chief, could you explain your reimbursements, explain what a reimbursement is and where it's from? Is that like an officer directing traffic during construction and stuff like that?
No, that's different.
Okay.
So that extra duty, that's under a different number line. We never pay for that. That's directly billed by Shannon's crew, and we never see that. So that total's not added in. But a reimbursement would be like, we work with Yale for their graduation, they're gonna reimburse. We work the parade, you know, the parade will partially, I think, reimburse to some degree. All the federal task force officers, when they work overtime, and a lot of times they're working the overtime for us, for the city, they are reimbursed by the feds. Each officer is reimbursed approximately $15,000 a year, which is good. We've had less numbers of officers in those task forces because of staffing, but as we get more officers, we can put more people into those task forces and let them help us. And that's not something that's in jeopardy of Trump cuts or anything. That's something that's, you know, put into the system.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alder Punzo. Further questions from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for being here and for making it over here right in the nick of time.
Yeah, I apologize.
Thank you. You may be seated back in the gallery. Because this is a public hearing item, I want to see if there's a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item, the request for a budget transfer from the police salary account to the police overtime account. Any members of the public wishing to testify on that item? And one last time, is there a member of the public wishing to testify on this or the other item, the mayor's proposed budget for next fiscal year? Seeing none, a motion is appropriate.
Mr. Chair,
Alder Festa.
Sorry. I make a motion to close the public portion of this meeting.
Second. The motion's been made to close the public hearing portion of this meeting. It's been seconded. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The motion carries. The public hearing portion is over. That doesn't mean the meeting is over, because now we have departmental budget workshops. The public is, yeah, we did. We closed the public portion. Yes. Oh, you were saying, should we deliberate now?
Oh.
Well, we could. All right.
Mr. Chair.
Alder Festa.
I make a motion to move the item. Second.
Item 2 has been moved and seconded. This is the request for the transfer. Any discussion of this item? Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of this item. I think it's clear that we will see the effects of overtime going down later on in the process, because we're just starting with all the initiatives, like looking at the overtime and things of that nature. And we just have to figure out how we stay on top of them really working on it, with the understanding that we've been doing this for a while. Overtime is going to be the overtime. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Further comments from colleagues? Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I am also in support of the item. We need the police on the ground and the support for them. If it's in addition to the overtime, then so let it be. I'm in support of the item, and I ask colleagues to support it as well.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further comments from colleagues on this item? I'll just mention that the pattern in recent years has been to transfer money from salary accounts, and there are surpluses there because of vacant positions, and move it into overtime or other things. Our hope, of course, is that as positions are filled, those transfers won't be necessary, and we will see some moderation in the overtime. We're going to need to pay close attention to see if those hopes are realized or not, and we will be paying close attention to that. Any further comments on this item? Seeing none, all in favor of giving a favorable recommendation, please say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The item will receive a favorable recommendation to the full board. And that concludes the voting portion of this evening. Now we're going to move to the third and final item, which is actually a few items. Budget workshops with departments of the city, starting with public safety communications. Welcome back. And I suspect that there is some paper you wish to hand out. So why don't we do that first? And then we'll proceed. I think one more. Thank you.
Justin, 5569.
Thank you.
Shannon McHugh, 295 Orinoco Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
Joseph Vitale, 378 Townsend Avenue.
Rebecca Lovedower, 122 West Rock Ave.
Thank you very much. So the floor is yours.
I'll just do a brief intro. So the budget workshop today. We will be, public safety will be first, and then we also have the chief administrator's office, engineering and enterprise funds today. So I will, we'll start with.
For reference, public safety communications is on page 10 of your packet.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Page numbers are good.
Yep. Page number 10. So, to start off with, the first page, as usual, is just the mission and the, sorry, I'm having trouble. Let me just use this. Public safety, okay. We've included the mission of the Public Safety Department, Public Safety Communications, excuse me. And then the org chart for your review. We've included the FY 25 to 26 goals, and if there's any questions, we could, it's a brief description, so we can certainly answer those questions about what the goals are for 25 and 26. Then there's a budget summary, and we'll go through what's changed since the prior budget, and we can talk about the reasons for that. And then there's also a $3 million city capital allocation for public safety communication system. So if you can just go through the variances from year to year, and then if you want to give some rationale as to why things have moved. So the first change is the personnel costs, and there was a jump. It went up $34,000 from in the mayor's 2026 budget versus Board of Alder's 2025 budget. Most of that is just salary increases through collective bargaining. Overtime costs bumped up to $350,000, so it's a $100,000 increase. And then other personnel costs bumped up to $250,000, so it's a $200,000 increase. And then contractual services remained flat. So those are the budget changes year over year. There were no changes in personnel. And I'd like to open it up to questions, and we have Director here give you more detail about either the goals and some of the rationale for why the budget increased.
Is there anything you wish to say right off the bat about the rationale for those increases before we ask questions?
Sure.
I invite you to do so.
Thank you for this time. So the rationale behind the overtime increases, we went into last year with 16 operator dispatchers short and also 1 supervisor short. And of course, in that room, we have staffing minimums that change day to day, bid to bid, so we watch them by call volume. So we have to keep those positions filled. But I will tell you, with the help of the CIO's office, HR, we had a very aggressive recruitment, a test. We wasted no time once the test was posted, and we've been hiring, and I'm proud to say that as of today, it's a floating number, but we're between 6 and 7 operator dispatchers short right now. It would have been less than that, but of course, you have some sort of washout rate. We've gotten 4 more names this week. We're going to be bringing them in. And on the supervisor side, again, thank you for giving me the extra supervisor. We wasted no time with that this year. Once we got the approval, we worked with HR, CAO's office, and again, they pushed it right through for us. We tested, and the list was certified last week, or probably 10 days ago. Once we got the certified list, we scheduled the interviews for the top 4, because we have 2 openings, and we're going to be interviewing Friday at the Fire Academy, and we're interviewing 4 people. We'll have a representative from HR with us, and we'll be making the decisions pretty quick so we can get the room staffed up again. Some of the other drivers behind the overtime is, again, we're a small department. We don't have a lot of the extra resources other departments have, so we have a pretty heavy burden with FOIs. They have to be done. So those run into overtime from time to time.
FO.
Freedom of information, yes. We get probably the majority of.
I hear FOIA, but
FOIA, yeah, I'll
there
say
you go.
FOIAs.
Sure.
So we get a pretty good chunk of the FOIAs for the city. It's my, I do not want to fall behind on them, so when we do them, we do extend some overtime for it. But I will tell you that we're no longer working off of a single overtime slip. Everything that we do, there's separate overtime slips for different functions. So that if it's in FOIA, we list line for line FOIAs that we worked on. If it's a special project such as the BoA Finance Computer project, that's another overtime slip with some essays written into it. So we're keeping track of everything that we're doing, everything that's coming in and everything that's going out. But again, going back to the beginning, we're 1-for-1. If somebody is off or if there's a opening because of shortages, that seat has to be filled. We topped off last year. I have the exact numbers in here. It's like 471,000 total calls, and I was working 16 people short last year. So we're making every attempt to adjust these numbers for this year.
Before I ask a follow-up question, let me recognize our colleagues who have joined us, Alder DeCola from Ward 18 and Alder Morrison from Ward 22. Thank you for joining us. The next part is about the capital request. If more information about that would be, yes, we'd appreciate it.
So just want to get to the capital page. So the capital request this year is going to be for the upgrade of the communications equipment for both police and fire. We're operating, our equipment is warranted by service contracts, but it is getting to the end of its service life. Also, there's some advancements that we need to put into place, and there's also some other equipment that will be part of what we're looking at. So I can tell you that we took a very, very careful look at what we were spending, and we didn't spend every single dime that we probably could have taken. We went line for line. We're going to be replacing radios. We're going to, not the portables, but the fixed equipment, the furniture in the room, which is 2006, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we're going to do a complete makeover in the room. We're going to be moving some of the other radio equipment around so that we have some backup, and also in areas, in case something happens in one area, we also have equipment running someplace else. I don't want to get too far into that. So it's equipment, the radios, computers, computer screens, some software that we're going to be bringing in, and we're pretty much ready to go. Everything's going to be off the state bid, so we have a good idea of what we're going to put in. I have a coordination list so that as soon as we make it to the first of the fiscal, I'm going to be beginning coordination meetings because we're going to have to get this equipment in, but we're live, so we're going to have to figure out how to switch over, bring our center to a different part of the building, cut over, rebuild our room right away. It's going to be almost like extreme makeover. We're going to have everything in place so that when we get ready to do it, we'll have our cut over, rebuild the room, cut over again, put our other equipment in other areas of the city. It's going to be a big project. It's a lot of work, but it has to be done. We're going to be upgrading with digital encryption, which we don't have now. So there's going to be a lot of enhancements.
Thank you for that additional information.
Okay. And we did also have complete our communications consultant survey this year also.
Okay. Any other information you wish us to have before we open the floor for questions?
We have a couple other projects that are going that you have funded in the past for us. The microwave project is finally up and running, and we're ready for the install. We were able to fund part of it with ARPA, part of it with the last capital, but I can tell you at this time right now that the tower crews are on scene and we're plotting out all our moves to put this microwave system in. And I'm proud to say once we put it in, thanks to some of the ARPA funding, that other departments are probably going to be able to work off of us also. So we'll be upgraded and we'll be functioning 100%.
Thank you for that update. Seeing no more comments, we'll open the floor to questions from colleagues about public safety communications. There's a proposed general fund and capital fund expenditures for this department. Questions from colleagues about this item? Alder Furlong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Just wondering quickly under the capital, what are the cameras?
Excuse me?
Under the capital, what are the cameras?
So since this is a high priority equipment, we have security cameras on things like East Rock Tower and where the hardware is for the backbone of the radio system.
Outside cameras, not.
So there's cameras inside the room for the server and then outside for security. You don't want that tower to go down.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furlong. Next on the queue is Alder Festa, and then the queue is open.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you mentioned that you are 6 to 7 short in the dispatch. Will this help with overtime once you're fully functional, or will you? I know you said that some of the driving factors were the shortage, but it seems like we're not as short, and you're going to be hopefully hiring additional personnel shortly. Will that help with the overtime, or are you just preparing for worst case scenario?
So, two things. It will definitely help with the overtime. And I forgot to mention, a lot of my overtime budget is funded through the state. But the hiring process that we have is almost, and we're not the police department, but it's identical to police and fire. We just don't hire, train, and put that trainee out onto the floor to perform all the functions in the room. So when our trainees come out, there's almost like the FTO, it's a CTO portion, and communications training officer, they're with that officer. Then from there, there's an observation period on their own, then they go on their own as a call taker. They are not a fire or police dispatcher. They need a little time in the room. It's not your typical call center. So they need time in the room to get acclimated to the room, to see if the pressure and the forces in that room are something that they are willing to stick it out through. And we have a very good success rate, believe me. When I started all this, when I came back in 2022, we were extremely short. And there was also the cross-training aspect of the police and fire radio training that wasn't happening because we were just coming out of COVID and the 2021 and the staffing issues. I'm proud to say I have a list right here that shows that we're at 24 or 26 of my employees are now fully cross-trained, with just a couple of them that only have one discipline, and 2 of them are actually in the opposite discipline right now. And the reason why that's important, I can have a room full of call takers, and if I have a radio dispatcher book off, I can't pull that call taker and put them in the radio seat, put them in the radio seat. They have to be trained in the radio. So you give me all the call takers in the world, it's not going to help me. But we are moving through this list. There's very, very few at the bottom of the list. There's more that are scheduled. And while we are hiring and training new employees, we're also working closely together with Justin, Becky, the HR department. When the names are coming to us, there's a background stage and there's everything else that's going on for the new employees. But when we're waiting and we're in that waiting period, we're bringing employees in that are already working here and we're cross-training them. So we're not losing any time in between. It's almost like the delicate balance, like new people, cross-training, new people, cross-training. And we run a full-time training academy. So we're not waiting for anybody to train us either. Our goal this year is to get through this list that I have here and see this whole column where it says specialty, that says PD and FD. But I will tell you one thing, as bad as I want this column filled, I am not going to, I'm not going to jeopardize it by pushing people through unless I know that they're ready to sit on that radio, because in this city, they need to be ready to be on the other side of that radio and help the community. But we will get through.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Also, in the capital budget, it says security and reliability at the dispatch center. What is meant by reliability? Is our equipment not, because we rely actually
Yes.
on your department to get these calls out in a timely fashion. What are, I guess, the challenges? And
Here's the challenges. The equipment is reliable. I can sit right here and tell you that we have service contracts with Motorola. We do not fool around with any secondary shops. We go directly to factory shops. Service contracts, everything's being serviced on a regular basis. They're in and out of our building on a regular basis. We're keeping this equipment running. But you have to think of the radio equipment as a computer. So if you have a computer that's 10, 15 years old, you know that eventually that battery is going to die and they're not going to make that battery. So you have to get a new computer. Now on this side, they're making the parts for us, but we're not going to wait for them to phase everything out. We have the system designed, we're ready to start replacing, and that's what the reliability is. We'll have our new equipment, we'll have the security enhancements, and one of the main things really is the encryption of the air traffic that's going across and the sensitivity of what's coming over that radio will be over an encryption system.
Okay, so that, all this will help
Yes.
with that
Yes.
noise, background noise. Okay,
Yeah, a lot of that background noise will be out of there with the new microwaves and also new antennas. We're going through everything. I have a tower crew going up to East Rock. We're stripping every single thing off those towers, everything that's been up there for years. I'm not going to allow them to just abandon. We're removing. So we'll get it done.
well, thanks for that, because we rely on your department to get,
I appreciate it.
our calls out there in a timely fashion. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues about public safety communications? Seeing none, we thank you for your time.
I thank you.
Thank you.
We will continue with the engineering department. And what page shall we turn to?
Engineering?
Page 6. We'll just give a moment to transition and we'll get going. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, I'm Giovanni Zinn, I'm the city engineer, 95 Soundview Terrace.
The floor is yours.
I think we've seen the layout enough. I've been going through how we laid out. We have the mission, the org chart, FY 25-26 goals and initiatives, which if there's any questions, I'm sure that you'll give you more insight into what those goals are and why they're important to the city. And then the budget summary. So the budget summary, I'll just give a high level and then we can get into the details right after. But the personnel costs increased by $200,000, $200,600. And it reflects collective bargaining increases and 2 new positions that we recommend so that the city can move forward and get all of the work that's in the that's planned and needs to get implemented to make sure it's done in a timely, efficient fashion. There is 0% increase. I mean, there's no increase in materials and supplies. We're keeping the budget line same as it was the year before. And then there's a $150,000 increase in rentals and contractual services. So this is just increased costs for external contracts and rental services and inflationary pressures. But all in all, the budget increased $350,600. And then the capital allocation, city capital allocation was $8.45 million, and there's a variety of projects that we can go into detail as you wish. But that is an overview of the document, and I will.
Thank you very much. If I may, Mr. Chair, just provide a few more comments for context. First of all, I want to say thank you to the Board of Alders for all of your support over the years for the engineering department. I think I'm at 10 of these now, so it's been a while, and I really appreciate all your kindness and support over the years for that. We're very grateful for the mayor's proposed budget. The big changes are 2 new positions, the titles of which are resource analyst and scheduler and civil works specialist. The first is we have a lot of projects, as some of you may have noticed, and that's someone that helps us build sort of track time, similar to how accountants track money. It's an opportunity to have someone that helps create project schedules, also overlay project schedules on top of each other so that we know that we're not scheduling, say, our chief civil engineer to do, 10 things all at the same time. And then, there's someone else in the department that could help with that as well. And making sure that also our contractors, so, we have public bids for a lot of our work, making sure that they don't have overlaps as well. And generally speaking, keep much better track of time, which is a very valuable commodity and something I'm sure you hear a lot about from your constituents, making sure that infrastructure is delivered in a timely fashion. The second is civil works specialist. We have a lot of work out in the field that we do. This is an opportunity to have someone who can spend more time watching and monitoring work, making sure it's being done correctly, that the city is getting what we're paying for, and that it's done specifications, also dealing with any questions that arise from neighbors or others, and also acting as extensions to especially more senior staff in the department so that they can continue doing more higher level design activities and other things like that. Also particularly important, I think, helpful for our sidewalk program, making sure that gets done as efficiently as possible, and also keeping better tabs on all of the private sidewalk work and other private development work that's done in the city. We see a lot of that. Currently our chief civil engineer goes out and inspects a lot of those to make sure that done city standard, along with the public works department. But some of that is more technical in nature, and that's where having some staff in the engineering department to help with that as well would be very beneficial. So these are 2 positions that not only do they do work themselves, but also help multiply the effects of the works of all the other people in the department. The other major category in the general fund that I'll highlight is rentals and contractual services. The very vast majority of that goes to our building management contracts, which you see from time to time as we submit them. The same financial pressures we see elsewhere in the world exist here. The cost of labor goes up, as it should, and as living wage goes up. A lot of our cleaning and security work is done at living wage or a little bit above, so it's sensitive to that. Also, just the cost of everything, as you all know, has gone up a lot, and that is even before we take into account recent tariffs and things like that will probably have very significant impacts on everything that we're doing in engineering. And so also in the last several years, we've added a lot of square footage to our portfolio, and you've heard about that for 24 Chapel Street, boathouse, in addition to these 2 buildings, and the police department as well. As general fund, I can also jump into capital if you'd like. So I think we're pretty familiar with our capital categories that we see every 2 years. The first is streets. Street reconstruction. This funds not only things like speed humps, which a fair number of you have requested, as you well know, but also it helps us with design costs like surveying, software, consultants. For a lot of the bigger state and federally funded projects, the big state source that we get for a lot of our large roadway projects is a program called the Local Transportation Capital Improvement Program. The city is responsible for all the design costs on that, and I think we've gotten really efficient on that. And that's what this line item supports, and then they pay 100% of the capital of the construction costs. So that's a very important line item. Sidewalk reconstruction speaks for itself. We pour a lot of sidewalks. We have, I think we're going to be up to 7 crews this year working in the city between our large and small cap sidewalk programs. That being said, I think we're tracking 1,000 locations right now for repair in the city. And I don't know if I will ever catch up, but I will die trying. So it's, there's a lot of work to be done on our sidewalks, and that's an important support. Bridge rehabilitation, this is actually a very light number on bridges right now. We don't have any bridges that are immediately going to construction. One of the biggest bridges that we do have coming down the horizon is the Ferry Street Bridge. Essentially everything that wasn't done in the last, in the aughts, when the Ferry Street Bridge was closed, a lot of the work was done on the central span. We have to now do a lot of work on the two approach spans. We're working to find federal and state funding for that. That's in the tens of millions and beyond what we can bond. So at this point, we're bonding for some sort of more bridge maintenance types of projects. We also have some capital funds left over that we're going to use for that, and trying to really get ahead of having to do major projects by putting in like a new waterproofing membrane on certain bridges and other smaller dollar value items that extend the life of a bridge by 10, 20 years. Facility rehabilitation, this is a big item for 2.15 million. This is for a lot of our capital upgrades and improvements in our buildings. You can see some scaffolding, for example, going up in front of City Hall right now. We're rebuilding the parapet of new City Hall to work on some water intrusion issues. We have roofs that we do. We've built a new evidence building, for example, for the PD to house all of their evidence in a way that is compliant with it's CALIA or what. I pay attention to the PD meetings. And other necessary things for our facilities. We certainly recognize that city facilities are not maybe the first place to think about investing, but it's important to invest. And it's these sort of constant trickle of projects that then avoids us from simply not spending for 20 years and then having to replace a building that is much more expensive. So that is again a lot. And we also include firehouses. We've actually done a lot of HVAC replacement in firehouses. We have plenty more to go, and quality of life improvements in there as well. General storm, this is for our stormwater system. This is the repair to catch basins, drainage pipes, and other things. Our infrastructure is old. We're an older city, and there are a lot of things that we have to fix. A lot of those are catch basins that the tops get broken and things like that. And that's kind of the run-of-the-mill thing. And then we have bigger projects, like we're going to start in a few weeks a project to replace about 60 feet of a collapsed clay pipe in Humphrey Street. That's 15 feet underground, and that's an old clay pipe. We run a little TV camera through it, we inspect it. Places that we just line it, we do that. That's more cost effective. This one, it's kind of completely failed, so we have to dig it up and replace it. But that's what this funding goes towards as well. Finally, flood and erosion control. The flooding is a problem that unfortunately we deal with in many different spots of the city. We have sort of generational support from our delegation in Washington in the Army Corps project. A lot of this funding goes towards our match in supporting the Army Corps design process, which is going on for another 2 years here. And that ultimately is a $160 million project to build a flood wall and pump station at Long Wharf. And we've certainly appeared before you a couple of occasions to discuss that project. And so this is a small amount of money, but ultimately very critical to keep our obligations on that project going. With that, happy to answer any questions.
There's an indication in our documentation about changes to permits, licenses, and user fees. In a previous departmental presentation, that was shown to be a typo or maybe looking at the wrong year. Are you proposing any changes to the permits, user fees, or license fees?
I don't think so. Not that it comes off the top of my head. We don't really do too much of that. I believe we have a stormwater connection fee that a handful of projects pay each year. And then the people that walk up and request maps has gone to zero. And I think essentially they all just take pictures of the map and walk out. That's probably cheaper than me trying to collect 75 cents from them or whatever the fee is.
So for knowledge, there's no
proposed changes to that?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. So, the queue is open for questions from colleagues for our chief city engineer. Alder Furlow, and then Alder, did you want to get it? Okay. Alder Furlow, then Alder Walker-Myers, then Alder Punzo, and Alder Festa. There's a bunch on the queue, starting with Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Rosen, for your presentation. I didn't catch the entirety of the new positions. So I'll ask again, just if you would give high level. So my first question is, are these new titles that are being added on? Is this a replacement? And just a high level of, I know you said part of it, but you were talking fast, I didn't get it.
Sure, I'm sorry. These are actually both new titles. I think the resource analyst and scheduler is kind of a new concept of, it's something that's actually fairly often used in the construction world for construction companies. And it's really looking at all of the schedules of projects and also how each project meshes with the other. So it's not like just looking at one project in isolation, but all of the projects that we have. What is it that we have to accomplish in the month of June, right? What is it that has to get done in the month of July, and making sure that we have the resources and time to do that, and also give us a quicker understanding of when something is slipping or not moving as quickly as it needs to. The civil works specialist is it's sort of it's a slightly less costly position than say even sort of a mid-level engineer, but it's someone who has some experience in doing inspections out in the field on construction, who can really help other senior and mid-level staff focus on design and other types of activities or specialized inspections in the field. And so really kind of as a force multiplier for the department to free up some of those sort of more generalist resources, while this person is really dedicated to being someone who is out in the field, working with contractors, making sure the city gets what it's paying for, and also private developments are constructing what they've been approved to construct, in terms of the public right-of-way improvements for, something that goes through site plan review, for example.
Great, thank you. And the final 30,000 would be for the increase for contractual agreements and
Correct.
Overtime? Or just
No, we do not have anyone eligible for overtime in mind.
Why is that?
They're all in a range that's too high.
Oh, okay. What union is that?
It's all 314 FEMA.
That's very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Next, we'll have Alder Walker-Myers, followed by Alder Punzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You kind of answered my question in reference to the position that will be making sure our contractors are on par to do what we need. Specifically, I'm asking about the sidewalk ones.
Sure.
Specifically about those.
Yeah, so, sidewalks have to be built to city standard. They have to be 5 inches thick. They have to have joints in certain spacings. They have to follow certain details for, say, an ADA ramp at a corner or a driveway. Our contractors also, making sure they keep a clean and neat work site and things like that. Our contractors are fairly good about following at least their city specifications and details, but also with private developers. Often people aren't used to New Haven or used to how we do driveways. Like we don't allow asphalt driveway aprons. We get those from time to time, and then we have to work with the contractor and say, hey, this is what holds up in a city environment, and so this person would help do more of that, so we can get out there more often. And allow some of our staff, especially our senior staff, to come out when there's something that really needs their expertise, but sort of the day-to-day can be delegated to someone who can really focus on that.
I appreciate that. I guess I'm talking more specifically to when the contractors say that they will be performing the work or the work is done, that it's actually done.
Yeah, so we do inspect work that is done, as opposed to, the question you said, well, when are they going to do it? I think that's one of the things also we're looking at our resource analyst and scheduler to help understand better when things get scheduled. Sidewalk work in particular is very weather dependent, so that's where, as much as I'd love to give you all very accurate dates, that doesn't happen often. Also, they're small businesses, so we've had, in the last few years, like their entire crew got COVID, they're gone for 2 weeks, and that it's a death by 1,000 cuts. We talk a lot about why infrastructure takes as long as it does, and why schedules, and it's really hard to point ever at like one thing that cuts across all the projects, but rather it's the death by 1,000 cuts. And so, I think that both of these positions are attempts to kind of make sure we manage and get on top of those cuts right as they happen, and make sure that it doesn't become the death by 1,000 cuts, but it's, the 3 cuts that we got past faster, if I can abuse that particular metaphor some more. And that's really what we're trying to do. They're fairly, sort of entry to mid-level salaries in our department. We're, very grateful. We're a well-compensated department and highly technical people, and skilled people. But it's a way, again, to also, all those salaries you see above in the budget, it's a way to multiply all those as well.
Thank you. I have full confidence that these 2 positions will take care of the issue that I'm specifically talking about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I hope so.
Yes.
Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Alder Punzo, then Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You answered part of my question, specific work requirements by a contractor. Are there any specific requirements for a contractor to be hired? I mean, what does the city require to hire a contractor?
Well, it depends on the type of work,
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they have to be, there's a lot of sort of general requirements the city has. They have to be licensed to do business in the state of Connecticut. Certain larger projects have, you have to be registered with the DAS of the state for really large projects. Depending on the type of work, we have requirements about having done similar work in the last X number of years. We also try not to create a number of barriers for smaller contractors who are trying to enter in. I think that's something that we're actually really proud of, is that, when I started, we had sort of one contractor doing a handful of sidewalk streets each year. And now we've got 7 contractors, 5 of them or 6 of whom are pretty small contractors, some of which are New Haven based. And they've grown, and now they're doing work in other towns. One contractor was New Haven based. He started, I think it was a $50,000 contract the first time. He got $1 million contract from us a few years back. And has been doing work in other towns and things like that. Of course, then it's hard to get them to do our work, but that's a good problem to have. So yeah, again, it really depends, but we really want to make sure that whatever requirements we do have, and we have enough requirements to protect the city and make sure we don't get bad work, but that there's also opportunity for businesses to come in. One of the things also is that work over $150,000 requires a bond, which is essentially an insurance policy. Never had to call a bond, and that's a fairly challenging thing to do. I have had to threaten a few contractors over the years with a bond, and that usually gets them very, they pay attention quickly. So that's another thing as well.
Thank you. And the contractors that have done work in 17 are the ones who are very, very good. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Punzo. Next will be Alder Festa, followed by Alder Morrison, and then Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we're on the contractor, how does our list look? Are we looking good? Because at one point, I thought maybe last year we were struggling to find contractors to help us.
We are always looking for more. We were at 2 and 3, and now we're up to, I think, actually 6 distinct contractors doing sidewalk work. We, always can use more. And we certainly want to see that, because it's a way also to As some of our contractors who grow, they'll get work from Hamden or from, some of the other surrounding towns, or we get private work. And we want to get, people doing work all the time in New Haven. We have a lot of needs. And you've been very generous with your support for example, our sidewalk program. So if you know any, especially New Haven-based contractors, send them our way.
Okay, and I did have here any local, but you already answered that. So I'm glad to see we do have some successful ones, or at least have become successful. So regarding the two positions, and I guess kind of the contractors, and my question will go hand in hand, but will the two new positions actually help expedite projects? I mean, obviously you need the contractors.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the purpose of the resource analyst and scheduler is to really, manage time as a resource with the ultimate goal of delivering infrastructure faster. Making something that is a 3-day delay not turn into a 2-week delay. And it's as we were talking before, it's the death by 1,000 cuts in that, and just having an easy way for us as managers and for my management who's sitting here to be able to see quickly when something is starting to slip and not have to wait for a month or wait for a phone call or something like that. So that is the ultimate goal and the charge, quite frankly, the mayor has given us as well, to find ways to increase the speed with which we deliver infrastructure. With that being said, we did a whole process, sort of process mapping how infrastructure gets delivered. It is many, many columns and pages long, and there are, hundreds of steps to a project, and that's always going to be a challenge. I don't want to be so, have the hubris of saying that, we're going to figure out something in New Haven that, a lot of other communities struggle with, but, I think we can be among the best of those communities for sure, and that's what we strive to do.
I mean, considering you have a fairly small department with the number of projects that are projected, which is all good. We have a lot of really good projects in the pipeline, and now it's time to bring them to fruition, which is, I think, what frustrates people the most is it seems to take so long. But I guess folks need to understand you have a department of what, 8?
No,
10?
16.
Okay, 16. I'm just seeing here.
The additional positions are capital funded.
Okay.
Right, yes.
But still, with the number of projects that are in the pipeline, and that's why if these two positions will help expedite some of that, but you also need the contractors to back them up.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an opportunity here it's sort of an all of the above to try to move things faster. It's getting capacity from contractors, consultants, surveyors, all the other people that do, especially, in more complex projects, designers that we don't have the expertise to do a design project like a bridge, for example. That's one of them. Designing traffic signals is something I've actually been pulling my hair out recently because I've yet to find a designer for traffic signals that meets the schedule. And that's where having some of these folks that can really give very quick alerts as to when schedules start slipping from our consultants, from our contractors, and even internally, that's the benefit there.
Okay. I mean, who does all that now?
We all each do a bit of it. It's a lot.
Is your department fully staffed?
We are not. We are hiring right now for 2 positions. We had 2 retirements in the last month or 2. February.
But you have folks that are being
posted. Both postings have come down. I believe we have people for both, and we're putting together the tests. We may hit April or May at the latest for civil service, and then we'll hire.
And you said that the only fees we charge are for copies of maps, but people.
And also there's a stormwater connection fee for larger developments.
For larger, but we don't charge a photo fee. You should probably charge a photo, you know how you go to.
Yeah. I mean, quite frankly.
Go to Manhattan and take a picture with Elmo, but you need to pay them.
I think quite frankly, the quality of time that we would spend for the handful of people that come in and do that nowadays, it's probably more expensive in terms of staff time than the fee that we would cover.
Just joking.
Yeah.
Okay, and your capital project, I mean, you know, when you see it on paper, it looks like a lot of money, but when you look at the projects that need to be done, it's probably not enough.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about this the other night at CSEP, how, you know, the city's capital funds, the way I view them is that, you know, they take care of some of our very core needs, like, you know, the sidewalk work that you can't get grant funds, but a lot of it is really kind of the seed money to help us go out and get a lot of other funds from state and federal sources so that, you know, we're involved in over $500 million of projects right now that will be between now and the end of the decade, the next 5 years. Probably every single one of them, there's a few fingerprints in there of city capital dollars that started things off, and then it allows it to grow into so many other things. So that's where, yes, it's we're very lucky. Out of the $60 million that are proposed, you know, 8.45 of them are allotted to the engineering department. It's incredibly generous and helpful, but it's really our job to multiply that and get a lot more and turn that into $80 million. Which I think is not necessarily an exaggeration of where we'll end up.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Next on the queue is Alder Morrison, followed by Alder Smith.
Thank you. So I have a two-part question. Kind of going back to, I guess, last year or the year before, I know there was discussions about the upgrades of the parks throughout. And so I don't know if since the change in administration, whatever, if that has stopped, or is it a continued plan?
No,
I
I
didn't know
think
if it was a part of this capital, your capital project request, or are there still monies from before in play to
So
help?
I think the parks capital request has always been in the parks, well, at the time, the Parks and Public Works Department, now in the Parks Department itself. You know, I think Max has done a great job to jump in and work hard on that. We also have a relatively new landscape architect that sits in my department, but is a Parks Department employee, Joshua Price, who's done a fantastic job. They're actually at a public meeting right now on some work in Quinnipiac River Park. You know, I think that'll continue through ARPA. We've done a lot of different, you know, both large scale and smaller scale investment in parks. I think that'll continue. There's a pretty healthy pipeline of that. You know, we've also done a lot of our athletic fields through that, whether it's cross or, you know, some of the Annex Little League investments are going on right now. Bowen, you know, the Pop Smith fields, those that touch, you know, each field, you know, touches hundreds of kids. So I think a lot of that is continuing on. You know, we're starting next week on the softball field at Blake, for example. So I think that'll continue on. And while it doesn't show up in my department's budget, it does show up in Parks's, and then that's another one as well that are very successful. And a huge thank you to our state delegation for getting a lot of funding for parks for the city. You know, we do have, I think, last year's budget that, you know, is now in construction, will continue to be in construction, Long Wharf Waterfront, which is really remaking, you know, the front door of the city along 995 into something that a lot of people can enjoy and want to stay down there and build on that success. So I think there's still a lot of really cool stuff in the parks pipeline, and I'm really excited to work with Max and the Parks Department, whatever we can do to help them out.
Well, the reason why I asked you, because I know we have these different departments, but I always see you when it comes to building and making things and all those different type of things. So I didn't know if any, if there was still, I guess, the ARPA funding and things of that sort in play to do all those different upgrades.
Yeah, we're tailing down the ARPA funding because we've spent it down. There's a bunch of state grants still in play. I think there's some capital money, and then there's the opportunity for more as well.
Well, we've allocated $3.2 million for parks in its own budget, so.
Okay, all right. And then this might, you're in everything, but then I guess they're all in the different departments. So thinking about like those state-funded, paving, grants? Because I know, for a while, we've been talking about, the pavement happening on these various, state roads, but there hasn't been much movement, so I'm not sure if that's because money's ran out or if the state has pulled that funding back, things of that.
No, I think we have funding available. I know there's one in your ward in particular that we're working on, and we can connect offline on that. The state has continued to be generous in their support. I think the federal support is not something we can count on right now. Hopefully that changes, and I don't know if anyone's got the number of days exactly, but it's roughly 4 years. I think, so that's been generous. I think one of the things also going back to the positions is getting more time and more sort of scheduling to make sure that, we block out exactly when we're going to work on different projects, so I can also provide better information to you than the guesstimates that I had to date, which sometimes are correct, but I'm sure all of you can name multiple instances when they've not been. So, and I understand that, and I don't want to make light of that, and it's something we really want to work better and get better at.
Okay. And just for the record, I wasn't just asking about that goes on a lot of roads.
Yeah.
And so, okay, all right, well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Next on the queue is Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go back to the new positions myself. With the civic inspector, specialist in which that you bring forth for infrastructure, can you tell us what else would they be able to do? Will they be able to bring revenue back into the city by checking on these different contractors that are violating, doing illegal work within the city after they have been to a site to measure? Will they be able to cite for going over the overage of the street cuts? Tell us a little bit more about what can they do and what will they be able to do.
The engineering department does not have the enforcement authorities that you speak of directly. That's Public Works, as you well know, you did a lot of that. This person would be more the technical expert that comes in and helps some of the staff in the other departments, whether it's building department or Public Works, that CI, whoever has that enforcement ability to write a ticket or to collect fees. There are fees collected for example, a private developer putting in a sidewalk. There is a permit that's involved in that. I believe the building department collects those fees on behalf of the Director of Public Works, if I got that right. All right, there we go. And so indirectly, this position would be involved in things that would generate revenue and would help keep those developers and contractors and private parties accountable. We do not, under ordinance, aside from stormwater violations, we don't have the ability to enforce.
Thank you. That answered a lot. I just want to make sure that we wasn't dabbling back over into other avenues.
Absolutely not.
Thank you. I think it's a good position.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Further questions from colleagues for our city engineer? Seeing none, we thank you for your presentation this evening and for answering our questions.
Thank you very much.
We're going to move forward in our agenda. Next is the Chief Administrative Officer, and I believe folks are already here. So, and what page should we turn to?
Page 3.
Page 3 of the deck. And Hugh, the floor is yours.
All right, I'm just gonna get the goals and initiatives, if there's any questions about those. I'm gonna go right to the budget summary. The budget, you can see the personnel costs have gone up by $52,409. That is collective bargaining, salary increases. The overtime, there was overtime expenses have significantly decreased from as you can see, $30,000 in 2022 down to $3,000 in 2026. So it's a $7,000 reduction from in 26 versus 25. And then rental and contractual services saw, we've seen steady increases, but this year they're projected to increase by $95,000. Again, inflationary pressures are always an issue. And then other categories such as utilities, equipment, material, and employee benefits. We haven't changed the budget, they remain at zero. So overall, the budget has increased by $140.4 thousand. And there is no capital to discuss. So I'll pass it over to Justin.
Thank you, Alders. I'll run through our goals and initiatives quickly for you. So starting with the top, with your citywide software solutions and IT. We're working on permitting software right now. Becky's been working through that. In our departments, we also have a new PD PSAP CAD RMS software that's being upgraded. We have the fire department is moving on to full use of their new software, and HR is working through a project right now to have software for training and education for all city employees outside of PD and fire. So those are all big IT projects that are going on under our departments. We are also continuing to work on refuge and recycling. You guys have seen the grants that Steve Winter's been working on. I'm actually going and walking the premises tomorrow by Siciliano to get a better understanding of what actually goes on at our transfer station and how best to deploy over there. As you know, our department works hard with Shannon, with Steve Winter, with all of our departments and all of our mechanics and fleet managers to work through the fleet. That is a big portion of what we're working on, trying to close out our previous capital and prepare for our new capital on fleet. That is a major undertaking. We have a lot of vehicles from, our engineers who are out there working in the field right up to our fire trucks. So there's a big swath of vehicles that we have to manage, and that's done through our office. We have to collaborate with all of our departments. So our engineering department works close with TT&P, city plan. We help manage some of that. We do a weekly meeting with them. We have upcoming PD, FD, PSAP, emergency management joint training going on. We have a lot of interdepartment work that occurs. We try to facilitate that. We try to bridge gaps, and we try to build relationships with all of that. Promotional testing and entry-level testing. These are huge in our, as we've discussed extensively in our public safety, from our PSAP employees, FD and PD. This is ongoing with the new PD contract. We're happy to report we've seen a big increase in number of people who are applying for those positions. We have Susan Mulmore from HR here with us if you have any questions on that, but we are definitely seeing that. We have classes in right now for FD. We have another class behind it, but we're also talking extensively about promotional testing, and it doesn't stop at public safety. We have testing going on, as you heard, in the engineering department for some of their folks. We have operations folks at parks, and the list goes on and on and on for our departments there. Engineering, when I came back to the city in this position, engineering was the one that gave me the biggest nerves because I didn't know enough about it. I knew working with Giovanni at Fire, but I didn't know quite how much Giovanni does and his team does. You've heard tonight how much he does, and you've only heard a piece of that puzzle. He brought up the number $500 million. He's not kidding. There are a lot of projects that engineering is working through, and engineering touches almost every other city department in some way, shape, or form. He does an exceptional job. His crews do an exceptional job. But as he said, he's constantly faced with several cuts that add up to those 1,000. So we try to work through that as best we can with him. I know I get far less pressure than Giovanni does to get projects done faster, but we're trying to identify things like these two positions that hopefully will expedite as much as we possibly can on infrastructure, both for the citizens, but also with our city buildings, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last mention on here is after action reviews of emergency storm special events. We recently had an event that caused a lockdown of overcalls. We just hosted, the emergency manager hosted an after action with some of the key partners there to make sure that we're deploying in the most effective way. This week we had the UI here to do our check-in with emergency management to have them just review some of our storm procedures. There's things that are constantly going on. We're trying to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of everything we do, especially with public safety. And I'm very proud to have come from that role and to help expand that role. So that's some of our goals and initiatives. I think the budget pretty much speaks for itself, just reminding everybody that a lot of these are divided between our office and the Human Resources Department. And if Becky wants to touch on anything, or if Susie Baldwin from HR wants to touch on anything, I'm happy to share the mic.
Since he's mentioned you, you might as well introduce yourself and give us your address for the record, please.
Sure. I am Susan Baldwin. I'm the Personnel Director, and I'm at 489 Central Avenue.
Okay, so do you folks have anything to add to the presentation?
Just because there is the other contractual increase, I think just elaborating on that, Susie and the team over at HR have done a great job in identifying efficiencies in our public safety testing. We've moved to online platforms that are more customer friendly for those entry level tests. This way you don't have to just come, Saturday and Sunday, you either come or you don't. Like, there's flexibility for those tests. And it has reduced some of those costs, but our biggest cost driver is our promotional in public safety. And over the next year, you're going to see a lot of that. We are about to certify another promotional test for PD, so that will take care of a lot of our ranks there. And then we are going to be very active on promotional testing for the fire department next fiscal year, and that's what's driving that increase in cost.
Thank you very much. Any further information? Seeing none, we'll open the queue for questions from colleagues. The floor is open. I see Alder Furlow. And I also see Alders Smith and Festa. Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. This is your first one on this side, right?
This is my first one on this side, yeah.
You spoke about not feeling the pressure. Stick around. My quick question is, I was just noticing the decrease in overtime. I'm just wondering why it's dropping so drastically.
It's twofold. One, as we flagged, the move to online testing for the entry level. A lot of our overtime was for those Saturday large-scale entry levels.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to look at you and talking to the mic at the same time.
Well, let me just say that what I think is needed is for you not to speak too close to the microphone, because that microphone doesn't like breath, but just to go a little bit slower, and then I think we'll get it.
So as I mentioned, the pivot in how we do those entry-level public safety tests, they used to be Saturday, Sunday, large-scale turnout, so you needed a lot of support for check-in and proctoring, so that was driving the overtime. And we've changed our positions over time, so we've professionalized some of our clerical staff, and they're no longer eligible for overtime.
This also include thank you for that. This also includes the ability for people to be tested at home, take the test at home, digitized.
Yeah, there are companies that during COVID especially really worked to figure out how do we provide testing when we can't have everybody in the same room. So these companies have really crafted a a process that allows people to self-schedule, and it gives a flexibility. Like Becky was saying, there was certainly a time where we would have, upwards of 1,000 applicants or candidates, and we would tell them, okay, come to Wilbur-Cross High School on this day, and that is your exam day. But doing it in electronic mode and a remote mode, we have been able to give candidates flexibility. Candidates can't necessarily take that Saturday off if they have another job somewhere else, or they have childcare. But the flexibility of having the remote self-scheduling exam process, which is proctored, and there is exam security, all of those have been addressed, has really, I think, changed the face of public safety testing, at least in entry level for us. when we gave the fire exam last year, I believe the examination period, rather than one day, was a 45-day period for candidates to finish their exams. And we were very excited to try that out. And I think once we get to the end of that list, which won't be for a while, because we got a very good sized list out of that process, it'll go even smoother than it did last year. Police has also moved to an electronic. I think that they are doing only one day of testing. However, they can elect to do it in our office if they don't have the capacity to do the electronic testing on their own. And we are seeing definitely an uptick in the police applicants now that the starting salary is far more attractive. I would expect that we never have a problem getting fire applicants, but the entry level salary is it's difficult. I would say it's probably difficult for somebody to live at their first year as a firefighter. It's not an attractive salary, but the job is so attractive that we still get candidates for it. And I'm very pleased that we were able to get police and fire entry level exams and hefty lists going, which in turn will eventually, when we get people out of academy and trained, will reduce overtime costs for these departments.
Thank you. Our contracts forthwith, isn't it? Just one other question, if I may. Thank you for that. I'm sure everyone on this committee is glad to see that overtime number go down. But do you find that this practice has made the hiring process faster?
Yes. Yes, without a doubt.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Farrell. Next will be Alder Smith, followed by Alder Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at what you mentioned about work to modernize our citywide fleet. Did we ever figure out with the fleet that was left at Public Works with the electrical vehicles? What's going on with that? And behind the wintergreen?
Can you be more specific about which fleet you're
Electrical fleet. I guess there was a port service station.
Yeah, so all of the electric vehicles that were purchased in November of 23 have been deployed. There was a little lag on getting those out into deployment because of the charging stations and, we received so many vehicles at once. There was, getting them radioed and GPSed and all of that took time. We have seen some of those vehicles back, and they're backfilled into things like our new building inspectors. We have a couple vacancies we're waiting to fill, so they get bumped back down so we don't have to purchase other things.
So the problem with that was the charging stations?
It was 37 came in at once. They didn't all have, you had to get the radios and everything, and then the charging station. So the logistics on getting them out to the new assignees took a little longer.
So do we have enough charging stations for all of those vehicles?
Yes, all 37 vehicles are deployed out there. They're all assigned a charger. We are waiting on an additional fast charger that's going to soon be installed at 424. I don't think we have a ship date on that. And I think Board of Ed has requested one additional charger to help facilitate their new maintenance vehicle. It is a van that is also an EV, and it's at a different location than their other EVs. So
I can confirm that as of today, that van went into service at Board of Ed. We're working through adding chargers at Board of Ed with some of their electricians doing it.
So the next fleet that you order, you'll be ordered if it's electrical?
So we actually we're trying to finalize some of the last purchases from this last fiscal year. We worked with Shannon and I met with Steve Winter. We were able to deploy a electric Silverado pickup truck to Parks. It just arrived. It's out for lettering lights and a radio right now. Our hope is to also deploy with it an electric commercial lawnmower and other electric powered equipment so that we can have some of our Parks crews testing an all electric crew in theory. So that's being worked out right now. We're looking to expand the Board of Ed maintenance fleet in EV vans because of some of the grants that were available. We are also looking at non-EV, but this is from last year, just to catch up, a large transport van for yard. So we're balancing out last year, and then looking forward, we have some rebate money that's coming in at the end of this fiscal year that we're hoping to reallocate into additional electric fleet and catch up on some other gas power fleet items. And then we've just started the request process for this capital year that we're requesting for fleet to start allocating some of that to FD, DPW, PD, and every other city department as well. Part of the problem that we have, as you all know, and I'll speak to it just bluntly, the price of everything is skyrocketing and the amount of times to get things are skyrocketing. So fire is looking at well into the millions of dollars for a single fire truck and anywhere from 3 to 4 years of build time. DPW plow trucks are rushing. We just purchased one. It was, when I say a hair under $300,000 with a plow, it was a hair under $300,000, and those are about a year out. And we're looking at a street sweeper, which is north of $300,000.
One other question. Is it possible when you're ordering these fleets, because I know some electric vehicles run off of gas and also electricity, which is very cost efficient, and you don't have to have all of those charging stations. If we can look into something like that, instead of putting out equipment that you can't charge up, that is taken away from production that happens in the city. And it's taken away from people that can get around in the city but can't because we don't have these different things. So if we can look into a better form of electrical vehicles that does both, I think it will be very beneficial to the city and to the residents of the city.
So to that point, Alder, I also want to add that we have worked pretty closely with Steve Winter most recently to look at our best deployment of EV and not to just buy EV because it's EV. So for instance, we found that the EV police car, we have an EV SUV police car. It's working out very well for the motor division, who handles a lot of funerals and day-to-day traffic. They were open to another one. We had the ability to get another one. They have the charging capability, so that was an area where we focused on getting another EV. We didn't rush into an EV at fire because they don't have charging capability at fire. We looked at it for their maintenance fleet. They don't have the charging capability. We knew it wasn't going to be a good fit, so we explored other options. So we are trying to be extremely focused on where to deploy EV. Another thing that we found out was that you cannot plow with EVs yet. So as a result, we started with one Parks truck, not a fleet of them, right? So we want to test the water, let that grow, see where it lands, and then build upon that. But we aren't just going to go out and buy 10 pickup trucks and then say, oh my God, we can't plow with these, right? So we're trying to be very focused in our deployment methods.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Alder Ketsa. And then after that, the Kuzma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more for HR. And I'm glad to hear you actually answered part of it, that the hiring process has actually diminished. Because it was mentioned, if I remember correctly, either last year or the year before, it took anywhere from 3 to 6 months from testing to actually hiring. And we weren't having luck hiring because obviously people are going to find another job within that time frame. How much have we decreased it?
I mean, it varies, depends on the role, it depends on the complexity of the exam process. But overall, I would say, I don't know, what's your sense?
It also depends on the applicant pool. Sometimes we have to extend the posting a couple times to get a sufficient number of candidates to make it a competitive process, because the worst thing in the world would be to go through a process and get one candidate on a list that isn't a good fit.
Yeah, I understood it to be that we would find a candidate, but it would take so long from start to finish that candidate would have been hired from somebody else.
Right.
So we would lose a good candidate.
Sure. Typically, the process is cumbersome, And we don't hire like, I don't want to call it the real world, but private, right? Where basically you can look on your phone and go, okay, I have an interview tomorrow. And then you get a message and in fact you get hired, right? It happened to my son. He got hired on his phone within a day of looking for work. He hadn't even applied to the place. They reached out to him and he was hired. We don't hire as quick as a day, right? The process is still is cumbersome because it relies on an announcement period, an applicant period, an exam period of some kind, and then we have to get the results certified at a civil service board meeting. So coordinating a timeline can also impact how quickly we can shorten that time. But I do think overall, I mean, I don't know how to quantify it. It's definitely not taking an average of 6 months. I have noticed too, though, that while unemployment still generally remains very low, and that means, unfortunately for us, we get fewer candidates applying for jobs, I have seen an uptick in applicants in the last, I'd say, 9 or 10 months. And we're actually trying to reach out now, like currently, to those in the federal workforce that may be out of work, that are looking for work. We're making efforts to try to reach out to those. A lot of those employees are told one day they don't have a job, and then the next day, oh no, we're kidding, you can come back to work. And then there's an injunction and they can't go back to. So a lot of those people don't know what they're doing, but we're doing what we can to try to reach out and find out who's looking for work.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's a sad
Yes.
state we're in. Once we develop a good candidate list, though, how long is that list on our backlog? Do we maintain it for a year, 2 years?
A list is, by rule, it is good for a year until, or if it is exhausted prior to that. And we may elect to extend the list in 3-month increments up to the full life of the list would be 2 years. I think we are like.
So I'll give you some good examples of that. So like a promotional exam in one of our public safety departments, it's a big cost to do those tests. You're testing from an internal candidate pool. So we generally let those lists live their entire lifetime. For a entry level list for AA, we actually have continuous recruitment because your churn is so quick that by the time you've, finished your interviews, you already need more people on the list.
No, I figured it was job dependent, but it's good to know. And if you have a good candidate, they accept a position and you have
I'm going
another.
to interrupt real quick, just because I think we're starting to go into a workshop about our hiring process, which is a very interesting topic, especially the sheer number of positions we have that are open across the city. But we're starting to stray pretty far from budget requests. So I'd like us to get back to the actual money.
And it was gearing towards those vacancies
Please,
that we have.
please bring it to that.
Which is, if you have 2 candidates that apply for one of these vacancies that we have, you could only hire one. Do you offer another vacancy position to the other candidate if you see that they might qualify for it?
Only if it's the same title and a department has an opening.
So civil service rules limit your eligibility to the position that you tested for. It's not to say that if we, say I interview a candidate for refuse laborer, they're not a great fit. The caretaker test is coming up. We can encourage them to apply and test for that.
Okay, thanks for that. I was just curious. And thank you. And happy to see that the time is getting shorter. And then just one more question, and this is more maybe for the CAO's office. We talked about federal funding cuts are we looking as to how that will affect us? I mean, and I know it's a big, you know, there's probably different levels, like a minute to really big.
Yeah. So I can tell you that absolutely. So we have a pretty much standing weekly meeting with a lot of top level staff. Shannon and Becky, I would say, and Ron Gizzi from Shannon's office tackled a ton of federal grant review. Building out everything, I will commend those three because a lot of our federal money is very clean and comes from, for instance, one that wasn't cut, right? AFG, Assistance to Firefighters Grant. We know that that's a federal grant that comes from the federal government to the city of New Haven to be used to assist our firefighters, right, for a specific topic. However, a great deal of our grants are pass-throughs. So they come by way of the state. So while it has state of Connecticut on it, it's actually federal money. So to try to identify all of that has taken a great deal of time. We've identified those types of money. We've identified the positions that are funded through that type of money. While that's painful to think about, it's reality. And we've also identified all of the projects outside of the city, but that affect the city as a whole. So even if the money goes to a private partner or the like, or perhaps a university or anything like that, we're trying to monitor that as well because it has snowballing effects into other projects. So yes, that is a very closely monitored thing.
And I know it's probably too soon to really know, you know, where those cuts are going to be, but I'm glad to hear that you're having meetings and monitoring it and staying up to date.
So the biggest problem I would say with that is that it ebbs and flows on an hourly basis.
Yeah, as we've learned. Yes. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Next is Alder Dicko.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for your presentation. Just want to follow up talking about EVs and you're choosing where to go. Just for the point of safety, are our charging stations away from the buildings? So if the vehicle catches on fire, our building doesn't catch on fire. And second, when the weather's cold, where do we park them? Because then it gets to zero, they won't charge, they won't work. So are we following through with the whole cycle of what we're doing with our vehicles? That's my question. Thank you.
It's totally understandable. So that's why we've identified 424s, some new chargers. They're on the exterior of the building. Board of Ed buildings, they're on the exterior of the building. 200 Orange, the tunnel does have a couple of chargers, but they're in the tunnel open space, which you can envision is right when you come down. They're not tucked into the parking garage area. So it's straight shot in, straight shot out with ventilation. And that truthfully was part of the decision of not putting them at the maintenance shop for fire was there, to speak very openly, they had a couple of break-ins. Those vehicles have tools. We want to make sure those tools were kept inside. We couldn't put chargers inside that building, so therefore we went with gas vehicles. So we are considering all of those things when we're deploying the EVs and charging and maintaining them as well. And I know you spoke at our last presentation of Parks about some of their deployment, and they've taken that very seriously as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Dicko. Further questions from colleagues for the Chief Administrator's Office? Further questions from colleagues? Seeing none, we'll thank you for your presentation and for answering our questions. And now we'll proceed with the final set of presentations, our enterprise funds. And I think it's probably possible to do them all, one right after the other.
I'll take it from the top. And I will try not to get the feedback this time. So as you know, we have 4 enterprise funds here in the city. They are budget neutral funds. So think of them as standalone funds that don't have any impact on taxpayers that are used to support the function at that existing fund.
Do you have a page number for where you start?
Page 15.
Thank you so
So the first is our East Rock Communication Tower. We talked a little bit about the tower before with Joe. This fund really dates back to the 90s when cell companies would want a place to put their repeaters, and we were able to collect a lot of money into the fund at that time. Down to one, I'll call it 1.5. I don't know if ATF is coming back. I'm not holding my breath on that one during the Fed stuff right now, but 1 or 2 rental agreements at the tower right now. It's in the spend down function. So basically all the money we're able to make at the fund is there for us for improvements. We try to tap into grants first, and then for that large scale infrastructure that is ours, we, like the microwave upgrades, this couldn't support that, so that's what Joe's going for the capital funds on. We can pay our service agreements out of here, and it's, structural integrity, that sort of thing. So we collect a couple $1,000s each year. There's a little bit of money there in case we can't find grants, etc. Ailing Memorial Golf Course, you guys have seen a lot of me on this year, so you probably don't need too much on this fund. This fund is doing quite well. We have a new operator this year. The fee schedule has been implemented. The fees will support the operations and will continue to support upgrades at the facility. We're just about to complete construction on the clubhouses. The enterprise fund pays those notes that funded the construction. For new golf carts in the next year, that contract will be coming up. So we'll be before you again on that.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna just pull it back. You get so excited, you keep leaning into it.
I generally lean when it get it.
Yes.
Does it hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, as long as you can hear
That'll
me.
be fine.
So yeah, again, we anticipate we will actually build on the balance again this year with the lots of exciting improvements soon to open. We're talking weeks at this point, not years anymore. The Ralph Walker skating rink is one of our other enterprise funds. This one is supporting the function there at the rink. It's covering our annual maintenance agreements on our chillers and everything. So again, budget neutral to the general fund. The contract pays in from the concessions and the base rent, and then we get a profit share, and that will fund the maintenance of the facility. And the last one is our quasi-enterprise fund, less formal in the fund because it's entirely a city function. But this is our Lighthouse Carousel building. So this is the enterprise that supports the banquet facility there at the carousel and the structure itself. So we actually have a very healthy balance from the years of the enterprise showing positive results each year. We're getting to a point where we're probably going to be doing a large project upgrading the windows on it. I don't know if it's going to be this year. You see that anticipated large expense hitting this year. It might actually turn out to be the next fiscal year, but we're in the planning phase on that. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that presentation. We're grateful. We'll now have questions from colleagues about the enterprise funds. Alder Punza.
About the golf course. Over here I see surcharge. Can you explain what that is?
So the surcharge is established by ordinance. The surcharge basically is, I would say, akin to a cart fee. It is not subject to the profit sharing. So it is a fee that is charged at the golf course as per ordinance that goes directly into the enterprise fund, and it is not split as part of our profit share agreement.
So that's not for example, I got a lot of questions on the golf course because I do play at the golf course. And I know a lot of people at the golf course, and my phone rings off the hook about the golf course. For example, take me as an example, $800 for a season pass. If I decide to do that, And greens fees are $12, even with a season pass. Why is there, if I have a season pass and I pay for a cart, even with the season pass, I still have to pay a fee of $12. Why is that?
Sure. So basically, think of the season pass as your discount card. You pay for the senior pass, and it gets you that lower rate. So your senior pass gets you the lower rate. It has a break-even rate. I forget, it's like 20 or 25 rounds.
Yep.
And then you're really seeing that benefit. So for those that golf a lot, a season pass makes sense. If you are, a one time a week person, that economics probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because in the consideration, if I've had a lot of questions, but I could do that other time. Then why call it a season pass? Why can't you call it like a reduction pass of some sort? Because to me, a season pass is that if I pay for a season pass, if I'm going in somewhere, I get in because I have a season pass with no fee. But it's more like a reduction pass. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It gives you a reduction on your cost.
So the unlimited usage wouldn't necessarily work because unlike say like a museum where you don't have a fixed, like you might hit your max capacity at some point, at a golf course, you have a limited resource, which is tee times. So I can't say, Sal, I'm going to sell you this ticket and it's good whenever you show up because I only have a certain number of tee times to do. So the number of season pass is, might just be a little off for people, but it's.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, I have answers now. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Alder Hudson. Further questions from colleagues about the enterprise funds? Questions from colleagues, Alder Fessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess while we're on the golf course, I guess, the pass, I guess I look at it as the Epic Pass for skiing and those are fully paid, but we won't waste time on that. Question about once the concessions are up and running, the construction is complete, is there any profit sharing with the concessions there?
Yes, so there is a base rent on concessions plus a 10% of all revenue.
Okay, and that will go right back into the enterprise fund for upkeep of the golf course. You mentioned the new carts to come.
So we are on the last year of a multi-year lease agreement on carts. So this year, we will be using the first couple of months with the new fees to project out to determine the best course for our next golf cart, whether it's a purchase, another rental agreement, a rental of used, which we did the last time. So that's the exciting thing on the agenda for the enterprise fund this year.
But that, again, the enterprise fund will take care of the expenses for all of that. When do we anticipate the clubhouse opening?
This reason I think slipped out the back. They're buttoning things up. We didn't talk about that at our last 2 weeklies because we generally get a sampling of the $500 million worth of projects, not every single one. So we'll have to get back to you with that.
Because I remember in a conversation, and maybe it was last year, that it was supposed to be open.
Around this time.
Yeah.
It's close.
It's close.
Okay.
When I drove by the other day, they were painting the lines in the parking lot. Let's give that up too. And the buildings were sealed from where I could see them because I didn't want to drive on the freshly painted lines.
Would you like me to follow up on this point, Alder Feston?
Sure,
Question
Mr.
to the
Chair.
chair. So heard.
Thank you. And then just a general, it looks like everything, we're okay budget-wise with all the enterprise funds being self-maintained. We don't foresee any.
All of the funds are solvent. I just continue to footnote that the East Rock Enterprise Fund is in spend down mode. Even though we do see a little bit of revenue in, it is no longer the tower self-sustaining.
Right. And what happens when, will we always need it? I know
we will always need it as it's the backbone of our radio communications.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Feston. I think we'll have to contend with the fact that without making revenue, it'll just be an additional cost for the communications infrastructure we need for our first responders. It's obviously something we need, but no longer a viable, self-supporting enterprise.
Further questions, colleagues, about the enterprise funds? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation, and you may leave.
Thank you, guys.
With our best wishes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank everybody who came this evening, including everybody who stuck around to the very end. Just a couple of quick announcements before we adjourn. Our next meeting will be on the 24th of April. We'll be here from more departments, and then we'll meet again after that on the 30th of April, which is when we'll have our third and final public hearing on the mayor's proposed budget. That is what's next for us on this committee. Alder DeCola.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. Any discussion of this motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Colleagues, there's